What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is me, Jello the Casual Card Gamer, and today we're coming out of our 2-week slump because I have been so busy with what life and work and everything. But yeah, we're coming out of the woodwork, and here we have another Clan Collection deck. This is the Military Dragon Raptor Colonel deck. I've been having a lot of fun with this. It is such a fun deck to play, so let's get straight into the deck profile. Alright, so first things first, we can't have a deck without a starter. So we have our minimum Carno. When wrote upon, draw a card. If you go second, basically, and your opponent doesn't get ride stuck, then you get a quick shield as well. Moving in to the main meat of the deck, we have 4 copies of Military Dragon Raptor Colonel. So his ability, first ability, once per turn, when it attacks, you can counterblast 1, retire 1 or more rear guards, and it gets +5 for each rear guard that you retire. Then if you retired 5 or more rear guards for his ability, and your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can restand it at the end of the battle that it attacks. So it's really nice. And second, during your turn, all units that are called during the battle phase get +5k. So you get to do little pot shots, little cheap shots at your opponent, especially if they're at 5 damage and they can't get away with taking a damage trying to get a defensive trigger to nullify the rest of the turn. Now, knowing what we have at the top of the food chain, let's start to move down. So first secondary grade 3, we have Sundering Dragon Terror Therazino. So its ability is from Vanguard or rear guard. When it attacks a Vanguard, you can retire another rear guard, draw a card, and if the unit that you retired had an equip gauge, then you can choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it as well. So that's really nice. You get the draw utility, you get to proc any of your units that have equip gauge abilities, and you get to retire one of your opponent's rear guards if they have any on the field. Next, 2 copies of Tyrant Deathrex. So from Vanguard or rear guard, when it attacks, you can Soul Blast 1 and retire another rear guard. Choose one of your opponent's front or rear guards, retire it, then Deathrex gets +10k for each of the equip gauges on the unit that you retired for the cost of its ability. So both of them do help you get to retire things and get equip gauges, but Therazino is really good for getting more utility and more draws out of the deck, especially if you have certain units on the field that just recur themselves after being retired. So those are our grade 3s. Next, going into the grade 2s, we run 4 copies of Military Dragon Raptor Captain. So when it is rode upon by Raptor Colonel, you can Soul Blast 1, search your deck for up to 2 cards with Military Dragon in their card names, and call them. So they have to be grade 2 or less. So you can call 2 captains, you can call 2 Raptor Sergeants, it's up to you, or 1 of each. It's really, really good, especially if you're going second, because you're able to spam your field and you automatically do get access to the restand ability of Colonel if you're able to full field. And second ability is when it is retired with an equip gauge on it, you can Soul Blast 1 to call the card back to the rear guard circle. So that's really nice as well. It gets to bring itself back. Next, we run 4 copies of Zealous Horn Dragon Dilopho Pyro. I have a very hard time with a lot of these card names. When it is placed on Vanguard or rear guard, you can counterblast 1 to draw a card. Choose a card from your hand, call it to a rear guard circle, and put an equip gauge on it from your top deck. And the second ability is when it is placed on rear guard from an equip gauge, then it gets +10k. So it's a really good follow-up attack after retiring one of your units that have already attacked. And moving in to the rest of the grade 2s, we have 2 copies of Regiment Dragon Reggio Dawn. So its ability is when it attacks, you can put the top card of your deck as an equip gauge to one of your rear guards. And the second ability is when it's retired from the rear guard circle by a card ability, then you can call one of the equip gauges that was equipped to it onto the field, but you can only do that once per turn. And you can also put the top deck card of your deck as an equip gauge for the unit that you call. So it reloads whatever you call out from its equip gauge. Last but not least, we have 2 Extortion Dragon Spinal Extort. So from Vanguard or Rearguard, when it attacks a Vanguard, you can counterblast 1, retire another Rearguard, then draw a card, call 1 equip gauge from the card that you retired as part of the cost of its ability to the field, and then put an equip gauge on it from top deck. So really, really good. You can get a lot of extra attacks off of them. Granted, they aren't the biggest unless you have Dilopho Pyro coming out from an equip gauge, but at least, especially if they are on axle circles, you know that they'll be a 10k guard if your opponent hasn't checked any defensive triggers. If they do, then most of the time you don't get they won't be able to hit anything, but at least they're there and you can retire them for Raptor Colonel after. And those are our grade 2s. Moving into the grade 1s, we run 4 copies of Military Dragon Raptor Sergeant. So when placed on Vanguard, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, search for up to 1 grade 2 or greater unit with Military Dragon in its card name added to your hand, then shuffle your deck. Then from Vanguard or Rearguard, when it is attacking or boosting, you can choose one of your units that does not have an equip gauge yet and put an equip gauge on it from top deck. Next, we run 4 copies of Full Speed Dragon Blue Sprint. So I run 4 Blue Sprints and 2 Reggio Dawns, but you could go 3 and 3. Same ability as Reggio Dawn. When it attacks, you can put the top card of your deck as an equip gauge to any of your rear guards. Now, the one thing that I don't like about Blue Sprint is that it has to be the attacker. It can't boost, which is why Raptor Sergeant is really, really good. Now, moving into the rest of the grade 1s, we have 3 copies of Ancient Dragon Iguanagorg. So its ability is, if it has an equip gauge, it's a cost for this ability is reduced by 1 counterblast, and it is, when it is retired from Rearguard, you can counterblast 1 to call it back to the field as rest. So if it has an equip gauge, it's basically a free recall, and you might be thinking, oh, why do I want this? It comes back as rest. Well, because it comes back as many times as you want it to. And with Therazino giving you draws every time you attack with it and retire, there was one game that I did play with it where I had 2 Therezinos out and 1 Iguanagorg with an equip gauge on it. So I attack with the first Therazino, retire it, bring it back for free. I get to draw a card off of that Therazino attack. Comes back as rest. I attack again with the other Therazino, retire the Iguanagorg. This time I just have to counterblast 1 to get it back and to draw a card off of Therazino, which is really nice. And yeah, so off of that you pay 1 counterblast. Yeah, you pay 1 counterblast for 2 draws and 1 potential retire, which is honestly really, really good. At least for me and the way that the deck has been working so far, I'd say it's really good. So 3 copies of that. And the second ability is when your drive check reveals a trigger, then you can put the top card of your deck as an equip gauge for it. But I don't use that ability as much just because Raptor Colonel retires everything anyway, and since it does come back as rest, it can't be used for a follow-up attack after Raptor Colonel. So no, most of the time after it's died 3 times, I put it into the drop zone, and that's kind of the end of it. And last but not least, for the grade 1s, we run 2 copies of Savage Shooter. So when it's placed, Soul Blast 1, draw a card and call a card from your hand. Put the top card of your deck as an equip gauge for the called unit. So that is for when it's placed on Vanguard. And the main ability that I run this for is Act. You can rest this unit, put a card from your drop zone as an equip gauge for one of your rear guards that doesn't have one yet. So this is really good for cycling your Dilopho Pyros, especially when you have Reggio Dawns out on the field, or you have, you have Spino Extort and a Raptor Captain, and you put the thing on the Raptor Captain, you attack with Raptor Captain first, you attack with Spino Extort next, retire it with the Dilopho Pyro as an equip gauge. You would Soul Blast 1 to get the Captain back, and it would get +5 off of your Colonel. Then you can call the Dilopho Pyro, and it gets 15k because 10 because it was called from equip gauge, and 5 because your Vanguard is Colonel, so that would be another 14 minimum and 24 minimum attack, and that is always really fun. And also, just because you don't want to deck out too quickly, I have decked myself out a couple of times with this deck just because of how long the games went, and I was just eating the entire field, but it was still really fun. Anyway, that is it for the grade 1s. And moving into the triggers, we run 8 crit and 4 draw, and of course our 4 heal guardians. So right now, I haven't put the prices on this deck just because some of the cards that are in this deck are getting more prints in the future, such as, for example, our Heal Guardians are getting reprinted in Volume 5 and 6, so the prices for them will fluctuate, so I'm not going to put any prices up. But anyway, yeah, it's 8 crit, 4 draw. I don't run any fronts just because you don't always get the extra attacks, the extra rearguard attacks with Colonel after it retires everything, so most of the time it is just Colonel left, but it is like plus 30, so it doesn't matter as much. But yeah, we have the draws because of course we need the draws to dig deeper into the deck, to excavate the deck for more dinosaurs. But yeah, and then of course 8 crits because we are running a restanding Vanguard, so of course having residual crits for a second attack are always really good. And then of course the heal triggers because we like healing. We don't want to stay too far down the damage line unless you're playing Ramiel Reverse or something. But yeah, that is it for today's deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm very sorry for the long pause in upload. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you guys are always updated with what is going on in the channel. I am looking into starting a new short series, not something as long as the From the Bottom to the Top deck, which I still have to edit the final episode for, and other really long series, but I am trying to test out new things for the channel. If you guys have any suggestions for future and current content, make sure that you leave them down in the comment section below. I will do my best to get to them. And if you guys have any questions or suggestions for the deck, let me know. I'm always open to try out changes if I have the cards. And yeah, that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am Jelly the Casual Card Gamer. Take care.